What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Shea Bridge Show. Me and Hayden are here on this Sunday night, 8 p.m. The next time we will be on a Sunday, possibly on a Sunday, it'll be football. We can actually watch football and not worry about the Mets. But we're still dealing with the Mets. There is September call-ups and all that other fun stuff. And we're going to talk a ton about Mauricio, ton about Beatty. We're going to talk about Alonso getting to the 40 home run club. Lindor, we're going to talk about series recaps and everything else we need to talk about in this last month of the baseball season. Unfortunately for our Mets, we're not going to make the playoffs. I mean, it was nice to see one of the hottest teams in baseball come into Citi Field and make Mets take 2 out of 3. I mean, it would have been nice if they would have done that in June against other teams, but beggars can't be choosers at this point. So welcome to the Shea Bridge Show, guys. Don't forget to please hit on that like button. And as always, subscribe to both channels. Hayden, how you doing, buddy?
Sorry about that. I'm doing all right, man. It is good to be back. As you can tell, I've been back at school for almost about a month now, 3 weeks. So good to be back. I do have a Met hat on, so please don't harass me today about the hat that I have on. Hopefully that's the only thing. But with that said, yeah, good to be back. If you're watching on my channel, appreciate you guys for tuning in. I see a couple guys from my channel and Rob, so good to see everyone here. Excited to talk about Mets. We got a lot of good topics to talk about. I know kind of the season's pretty much over for the Mets, but pretty much with that said, there's still a little bit of stuff to talk about. September call-ups, and offenses lately been clicking, and not really surprised, but a little bit too late. But yeah, with that said, Mets Talk with Hayden here. Like, comment, subscribe, post notifications, all that great stuff. And yeah, let's go Mets, baby.
Absolutely, absolutely. So once again, guys, subscribe to both channels and hit on that like button. Let's get more views and more people to check out the stream today. So we're going to start with Alonso. Alonso's been the topic for basically ever since the trade deadline, and we heard the story about Alonso being in trade talks with the Brewers and possibly the Cubs as well. But, and of course, somebody had to bring it up right away, of course. But, but listen, we know how good Alonso is offensively. Again, you could take it with a grain of salt. The guy hits 40 home runs with his eyes closed. We all know that. He joins the 40 home run club with hitting 2 home runs today. He's now at 41. He's at 100 RBIs now. I mean, he's just the numbers he puts up. We like the average to be around 250 at the very least, but beggars can't be choosers this year. His career average is around 250. It might drop now considering he's batting 220, but he had a really good game. He's back up to the 40 home run club. And when it comes down to it, I really do believe that the media had nothing else to speak about. And they made that trade talk with the Brewers more than it actually was. Again, it wasn't Billy Epler calling teams and saying, hey, Pete Alonso's available. It was Brewers and their GM being forward with that situation, right? Being proactive as GM should be doing. If you're in a playoff position and you're playing well and you're looking to add pieces, you're going to call teams, even if you don't think these players are available, you're going to ask, because why not? And the Brewers need a first baseman. Why not look for one of the best first basemen in baseball, in Pete Alonso, power-wise as well? And that's what they did. I think it was more the media having nothing to talk about over the last couple of weeks. And how do you get clicks? How do you get the fan base riled up? Negative stories. And Pete Alonso being traded is a very hot topic. And it would piss off a lot of Met fans. So, I know, Hayden, you're a huge Alonso fan. I know you're excited about Pete Alonso hitting another 40 home runs. And he'll probably have about 120 RBIs when this is said and done. Possibly hit 50 if he stays hot. But what do you think about Pete Alonso? What do you think about the whole bullshit that's been going on with the trade scenarios, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take a look at Alonso, I mean, there was a report that came out a couple days ago, like we all saw, and pretty much came out and said that, it was BS, that Alonso is happy. He's not a clubhouse cancer. And I think everyone knew it was BS. I concur with you, Rob. I think it's just the Mets are playing bad, the Yankees are playing bad, and it just seems MLB and everyone has a vendetta and likes to shit on the Mets. So I think it was just, I mean, if I'm a reporter, I want clicks, I want to get views. I do that. You kidding? So yeah, I mean, we don't know who that reporter was. I know Alonso said he didn't even know him. He didn't even really know who he was, so he was kind of surprised about the whole thing. But yeah, pretty much, I think it's BS. I never really believed it. We saw that the Mets fired a couple people in the front office a couple days ago. Could that have been kind of this FU leak, kind of an FU to Billy Epler in the front office? Pretty much meaning they had, just wanted to stir the pot or, whatever. Obviously, I know we're going to talk more about David Stearns and a new president of baseball operations and a couple other new executives later in the stream and, later in the rest of the year. But yeah, I knew the whole Alonso stuff was BS. It was nonsense. He's not a clubhouse cancer. I mean, I'm sorry. This dude is, I think, far from it. You see him, the players love him. Whether it's Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Daniel Vogelbach. I mean, everyone that's even left this team, whether it's former Mets and Juris Familia, JD Davis. I'm trying to go, diverse here. They all loved him. They all had positive things to say about him. DeGrom, Syndergaard. I mean, even controversial players like Syndergaard or Tommy Pham. They all loved him. Even guys that were never on his team said he's a great guy. He's a great player. He does all the charity stuff. So clubhouse cancer, clubhouse issue, that's bullshit. I never bought it for a second. And, like I said, now there's news that Alonso obviously won't likely be getting traded. I think the terms were, even Martino said this. So, I mean, and a lot of people said that the Mets are not going to trade Pete Alonso this offseason and that they actually have been somewhat talkative on a contract extension, but weren't really in an agreement. So whether that was the Mets not in agreement, Pete Alonso, whether it was too much, too little, like I said, at least they're getting the ball rolling, which I'm happy. They're getting the ball rolling. I'll take that. It's not like they're just doing nothing. So, like I said, we'll find out, in the offseason. I'm sure that'll be very big. We'll hear a lot about an Alonso extension in the offseason, hopefully. And, if I'm Billy Epler and, I think they're going to want to get the new president of ops first and then extend Pete. So maybe it won't be like the first week in November. But whoever the new president of ops is, that's pretty much the first move I would pretty much do. But yeah, pretty much finalize it. I'm done talking about Alonso extensions and trade. It's bullcrap. Personally, gun to my head, I would say he's a Met for life. He gets extended this offseason in November, December, maybe January. Yeah, and honestly, I knew the whole rumors were just BS.
Yeah, and look, Alonso's the last one of the court not to have a contract yet. So it is something that we have to look at. But again, I as soon as president of baseball ops comes, I think it's going to come not too long after the World Series is over. But there was a story, I think it was a couple of days ago, that the Mets are going to hire a president of baseball ops in 2 weeks. So I'm trying to figure out, like, does the David Stern contract allow him to get hired earlier than the season being over? I don't know, because he's an advisor now. He's not a GM anymore. So I don't know how that works out. Maybe he worked that out. And I'm sorry if my camera gets blacked out by my cat. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry, he just, he owns the place. So yeah, I don't know if that's something. What are you doing? Jesus. Just trying to chew my wire. Sorry guys. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So, listen, guys, it comes. I'm assuming that was a report. There, I don't remember who put it out there, but somebody put it out there that in 2 weeks they were gonna hire a president of baseball ops. Again, we know that Stern stepped down. I don't know if that was a clause in his contract that if he's not the GM and if he becomes something else of a lesser piece of a team, that he'll be able to opt out of his contract by a certain point. I don't know that, but I mean, the sooner the better, because I don't think you can play around, because you don't want to have, him get out of his contract and other teams are going after him. That's what you worry about. I know he's from New York. He's a Mets fan. He wants to be here. But you know what? Somebody comes knocking and it might be a better situation. He might not be there. Thank you, Easy. It was Peter Gammons. That's who it was. I knew it was somebody who put that out there. No, Easy. I agree. I don't know if it's a guarantee anymore, because if that report came out, that's true. In 2 weeks the season's still going on. My mind really, as soon as it did, it went to Theo Epstein. Maybe Cohen spoke to Epstein and say, "Hey, what do you want?" That could be a possibility, and I don't think anybody would be mad if it's Theo Epstein. I mean, he broke 2 curses over the last 15 years, 10 years.
And I mean, not to necessarily get into this whole conversation of it, but it's probably going to be someone we least expect. And that's kind of how it is. I mean, you look at the manager position, when we were talking about prior to Buck, when the Mets fired Luis Rojas, everyone was naming all these guys, and it was kind of Buck. He was kind of a decently known candidate, but I guess it's more the GM role. When the Mets picked up Billy Epler 2 off seasons ago, no one knew much about him. They knew he really brought in Ohtani, and that was frankly about it. So, I mean, when it comes to the GM role or even the president of baseball operations role, it's going to be someone we're least expecting. You could throw out names, whether it's Stearns, whether it's whoever, but it's probably going to be someone we don't expect. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of who, the Mets go on for the president of ops role. But even with that said, I don't really think that would interfere with an Alonso extension. Because keep in mind, even before that signing of a president of ops happens, the ball is still in Billy Epler's court. He still has control of the team for the most part. I don't know the specifics, but I mean, maybe it's possible that could interfere with an extension. So that's why I'm kind of saying get the president of ops early, because you want to have an off season, you want to be able to sign guys and make moves. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how the Mets approach of getting a president of ops is. And like Cohen said, it's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's been, year 3 and he still hasn't found the right guy. And I mean, it's a hard thing to do. So you want to make the first decision, the right one.
Yeah, exactly. So, you see how hard it is. I think it's hard to get for Cohen the first couple of years, is because nobody really know what type of owner he was going to be. And, going in with a new owner, the pressure is probably a lot higher than it is now, because there's pressure because it's New York, but now that they see how he works and that he spends a lot of money, but he also looks like he's trying to build a farm system as well, and that gives the GM, whoever that may be, options when you come in. I think that was a big reason why they fired all those the scouting director, the player development director, and all those other guys that were basically part of the Wilpon brand, basically. So little by little he's getting rid of the stink of the Wilpons all those years. And those guys, I was looking back at it, I think each one of those guys been there at least 10 years, and even longer. So they've been there so long that it's like it's about time we need some change. And again, and then, people keep on killing Epler about him not really doing much with the Angels, and then you look what the Angels did this year. And I truly believe that Billy Epler was handcuffed. I think Audie Moreno made a ton of moves.
Yeah, and that's what it is. A lot of people blamed Moreno, saying that he wasn't really giving Epler the green light on a lot of moves.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I said, I don't know if Billy Epler is a great GM or a good GM or even a decent GM, but I do know one thing, that since he's been the Mets GM, the trade deadline wasn't good last year, but if you really look at the bigger picture, he had nobody to trade. He had no farm system. Everybody, and then there was reports that came out that other teams wanted our pitchers that was very scarce as it is. The Mets weren't willing to do that. So they were between a rock and a hard place with that. And that's not on Epler. That's on the prior regimes that drafted like shit and didn't actually, build the farm system good enough to give Billy options when it comes to that trade deadline. That's why he got the Ruffs and the Vogelbacks, and why he had to give more during that Ruff thing as well, because they wanted actual players on the MLB roster as well, and the whole JD Davis thing. So I think that he was handcuffed in Los Angeles because of the fact that Artie Moreno seems like he was the GM and he made the moves. And you can tell because there's a new GM now. Billy Epler ain't there. And look what they did. In 2 weeks, not even 2.5 weeks, they basically traded to go for it. And then they released everybody and waived everybody that they got, basically. So it's crazy to me to think that, Billy Epler had 2 good drafts. I mean, highly ranked amongst everybody that says everything. And you can tell how good these guys are because the guys that he drafted are moving up the ladder really quickly. And, there's a pretty good chance that we might see Jet Williams in 2025. Parada, who knows? He might be up here next year. You never know. He might be in AAA next year. So you just never know. Acuna and Gilbert are 2 guys that I believe are going to get the biggest shots to make the team in 2024. Again, it depends on what the Mets do this offseason. But in all likelihood, I think they're going to make that left fielder position Gilbert's, in my opinion. The way I see it, I would move Nimmo to left field because I think Nimmo would be an elite left fielder with his no arm. But I think he can take all his ability that he learned in center field where he becomes.
I think the only issue would be, I would be in favor of that. I think the only issue would be is if Marte is still here for the next 2 years. Because a lot of people said, personally, I don't think Marte, I think his time in right field next year is done. Personally, we said it. Don't even put Marte back for the rest of the season. Him and Diaz could just chill on the couch for the rest of the next month. I don't anticipate the Mets getting rid of Starling Marte this offseason. However, anything's a possibility. If the Mets do still have him, which they probably will, I think his time in right field is done. You want to put him in left. You keep Nimmo in center. I know Nimmo's a very weird defensive guy. He's a guy who 5 years ago was, not even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, unwatchable. One of the worst defenders in baseball. And I don't know what it is. He's very unorthodox. He plays really far back, yet he's able to make all these shallow catches because he has the speed for it, which is good. Yeah. But, I wouldn't be against seeing him in center next year. Obviously, as he continues to age, you put him in left. But my only question would be then what do you do with right? And like you said, Nimmo doesn't have the best arm. We're not talking like Conforto or Harper or, someone with the great arm. So I guess kind of right field would be my only question. And I agree. I think Gilbert could be that guy. I know you mentioned Jet Williams has been going off on base percentage machine. I could easily see him turning into a phenomenal leadoff hitter. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to
the only reason why I said it, it's not to throw Nimmo out of center field. It's just that, I have a huge problem with guys that don't have no arms in the outfield. I think it's a huge problem. When was the last time an outfielder for the Mets throwing out a guy at home, going, second to home or on a sac fly? Like, I don't think Nimmo's thrown anybody out at home this year. And I think he might have had it one time last year, maybe twice. And I don't know. I think that saving more runs with outfield assist, I think is very important, especially for a team that is not the biggest powerhouse offensively and need to keep those runs at a minimum for their opponents because, they're scoring around the same amount of runs they scored last year, but they were pitching better, and I still think that like this year, if the defense was a little bit better and maybe there was still more outfield assists, maybe it would have helped the pitchers overall. Every time there was a hard hit ball up the middle and a guy on second, I looked away because I knew Nimmo wasn't going to throw him out. And it's not that I don't want Nimmo in center field. I think that if they believe he's ready and all signs that everybody's talking about that his bat, everybody believes that it's going to play in the big leagues. And defensively, he's very good in center field, really good in center field. I mean, he's a natural center fielder. There was something on Twitter the other day. They were showing how he ran down a ball in the gap, and it was like the quickest spot from where he was standing to where he caught the ball in the minor leagues this year. I think it was like 1.9 seconds or something like that. It was crazy speed. And he can go get the guy. I'm not saying that Nimmo can't do that. And Gilbert actually has a really good arm as well. So I'm not saying give Gilbert the position. Like, I want guys to earn it, right? I'm so sick and tired of people just, let's call this guy up and put him in the spot. And he's never earned it. And that goes for a guy like Beatty, right? I think that Gilbert should get an opportunity to do that. And the big reason why the Mets were so good last year, yes, the pitching was important, but their defense was extremely good.
They just were very aware and alert.
Yes.
With just certain plays. I saw it. I think it was twice last year. I remember, like whether it was runner on first, pop up, in the middle infield, McNeil, Alonso, whoever would drop it. I mean, little just fancy stuff like that. This was a very alert defense, just very noticeable and alert of just really, whether it was just being able to read the runners, situations, and you transfer it to this year and it just became very sloppy. It's gotten a little bit better, I will say. It's not like they're returning double plays routinely. We saw them. Yeah, and that's why. I mean, we saw in June. I mean, a ground ball to Beatty, bops it, or I don't know. But I've noticed, and not to get off topic, but I noticed double plays lately have been a little bit less. And I don't know if it's just the ball being hit softer now.
Do you think it's the new rules with the stolen base rule, the pickoff rule? They're getting more of a wider lead.
No. And that's what I'm thinking, because I noticed this year there's a lot of ground balls hit to the shortstop. They get there out at second, and then first he's just there. And even if he's out, it's like by a foot or two. So I don't know. Like, I've noticed that, double plays, I'd be interested to see if there's a stat of, like 6-4-3 or 5-4, whatever, 5-4-3 double plays being turned. If there was a stat and it tells me if it's increased or decreased this year, because I've noticed that. I don't know if y'all have too, but.
Yeah. That's interesting to think about too. Because, I mean, I don't know. I want defense to be a big part of this. I think it's extremely important. I think it helps your pitcher immensely. And I think that's the reason why the pitchers are so good too. I think that, they weren't afraid to have the ball put in play. And, they weren't trying to strike everybody out. If you notice this year, it seemed like a lot of guys, like especially McGill and Peterson, they were overthrowing. And it seemed like they didn't want to have the hitter put the ball in play because they didn't trust their defense. I mean, we saw the month of June. It was their worst defensive month. They could not catch a pop-up in Philadelphia. They couldn't turn a double play in Philadelphia. I mean, you could say the turnaround of the Philly season was that series in June that the Mets basically gift wrapped them with a bow in June. And I think that turned the Mets season around to the worst and turned the Phillies to the good. And I think that's the biggest reason why I truly believe that if you got extremely good defense and solid pitching, I think that you're going to win more often than not. Yeah, you got to score runs. But again, the Mets offense last year, and again, how many times on this channel, Hayden, in your channel, people talked about this team needs more power. This team needs more power. Well, the Mets are one of the top teams power-wise in baseball, right? They're hitting a lot more home runs than they did last year, yet
offensively,
they had, how many wins did they have this time last year? You know what I'm saying? So with a lot less home runs, right? What they were doing better was situational hitting, putting the ball in play, and not trying to, hit a home run every time they make a swing here. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes down to it, is that power is important, yes. But I don't want to see great. Nimmo hit a career of 20 home runs, and he's going to probably hit about 22, 23, maybe even 25 home runs. I don't want Nimmo hitting 25 home runs, because that means he's looking to hit home runs. He's striking out more. His on base is going to be down because he's striking out more, not taking walks, not taking a lot of pitches. That's something that I don't want to see from Nimmo, and specifically as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. And I mean, you look at Nimmo specifically, that, his swing is a little bit more leveled. That he it kind of looks like with Nimmo that he got the excess fat off of his swing a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the issue. If you're swinging the bat more, your power numbers go up. That's going to coincide with higher strikeout, chasing more. And this team is striking out more. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, Nimmo's striking out a little bit more. McNeil is chilled out, in a slump. He was striking out immensely, but, that's kind of stopped a little bit. But yeah, this is a team that strikes out a lot. And it's weird because last year they were opposite. They were a contact-oriented team, put the ball in play and took their walks and rarely striked out. But this year they're striking out a little bit, much more. But you notice the more power this team. Lindor's at 25, 26 homers. Alonso's at 41. We speak Nimmo's at 20. Alvarez is 21.
It's a lot of home runs.
Guys are swinging the bat a little bit more, and I like the power. I think power is important. I mean, I don't necessarily think the small ball approach is effective in 2023. I mean, maybe 20, 30 years ago, sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess right now it's kind of interesting. I think it's more the hitting philosophy. Is what type of hitting philosophy approach does this team want to have? And it's hard because, last year it's contact oriented, then it's hit line drives, then it's hit for power, then it's back to line drives, then it's just get on base. So I'm kind of thinking of the point where, what's your approach? Everyone in the lineup's going to have, you're going to have power hitters, you're going to have contact table setters. So I guess we're kind of going to have to see how with how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a big thing. McNeil's hitting 60 points less than he did last year. That's a huge deal. That means he's not been getting on base as much. And he would have been in front. Like right now, I like the way the top four is now. I do like the Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Alonso 1, 2, 3, 4. I like that a lot. It seems like Lindor is a lot better in the 2-hole than the 3-hole, and McNeil seems like he figured it out in the 3-hole. That's something you have to look at, right? This is your core 1 through 4, right? I like that a lot. Like, whoever you're gonna put behind Alonso, whatever happens, in the offseason, is Alvarez gonna be that guy? Maybe. I don't know, but I do like the Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Alonso. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I thought of that yesterday when I was looking at the lineup. I do like it, obviously. Lindor's typically been that 3-hitter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Lindor looks a little bit better in that number 2 hole. Now kind of in baseball, that the number 2 spot in the lineup's kind of a little bit more your RBI producer, mixed with some power, mixed with getting on base. He has some speed. And like I said, we're going to see how it goes, because once Marte comes back, is that kind of going to, be another thing?
Yeah,
I would like to see Nimmo.
It depends if Buck's going to be here.
Right. I would like to see Nimmo run more.
I'm
not really going to
come. Not going to do it, and that's the problem leading them off.
With Nimmo, I don't necessarily have a huge problem with him swinging the bat a little bit more, but I would like him to start running a little bit more. I feel that I don't know. I think when it comes to it, this team needs to run more. And I think it's, you look at teams like the Braves, the Rays, they steal. I'm sorry, Alonso's not going to do much. McNeil is average in speed. And that really just leaves you with Nimmo.
Yeah,
Lindor will give you 25, 30, sure. Mm-hmm. But you look at the rest of this lineup. I don't think Alvarez is going to be doing much. I think Beatty can hustle a little bit.
Mauricio,
we saw it. He has 2 stolen bases in 3 games. So I think there's definitely a need for that. And like we said, everyone's saying in the comment section, of course, you just said, Rob, Nimmo doesn't want to steal. And I don't think that should be a deterrent for him in the leadoff spot. I'm just saying in general, I would like him to run more because he has the speed. I don't know if the deterrent is injury prone, if he just doesn't want to run. He has the speed. He's capable of it. But we'll have to see how that goes.
Sorry, I was just typing to somebody. I wanted to bring up Joel. I typed it to him, but I want to no reason for Buck to be here if we are setting up for 25-26. Again, you fell for that media nonsense. All right. Nobody, Billy Epler said that, yes, we are trying to set ourselves up for 25 and 26. That means it for the farm system, for the younger kids that are coming up. But that does not mean that they're not going to compete next year and they're not going to do whatever they can. And there was a report that came out today. Billy Epler said it. They're going to be very aggressive in the pitching market this offseason, right? Everybody talks about the pitching. Oh, who's pitching? Well, yeah, we already heard about all the situation. We heard about Yamamoto. I truly believe that the Mets are going to go very hard to try to get Corbin Burns in a trade this offseason with the Milwaukee Brewers. You know, Julio Urias. You got other guys like that. You got a guy like Jordan Montgomery. Those guys are solid pitchers, right? We gotta take away from how many years, 2 years in a row, they talked about, oh, you don't want to face the Mets in a short series with DeGrom and Scherzer and Bassett, or Scherzer and Verlander. How did that work out for the Mets? We got to stop worrying about having the 1, 2, 3 ace, the co aces, and worry about, all right, you want one guy that's extremely, every time you go out there, you have a really confident you're going to win every time he pitches. But I want the other guys that I know that goes out there and gives your team a chance to win every single time. That I know that will give you 6 innings, 2-run ball, and you know that he's going to give you a solid outing. That's the most important thing. And we go crazy with that stuff. I just don't understand. Like, you got to read between the lines, right? They told Scherzer whatever they needed to tell him to get him the hell out of there. Everybody just, and remember, Scherzer said, oh yeah, they're not trying to win until 2025 or 2026. Scherzer said that, right? Yeah, the Mets are going to tell him that because the Mets organization was done with Scherzer. With all of his excuses, with the sticky stuff, and every time he pitched good, it was all about him doing the right thing. And when he pitched bad, he found every excuse under the book. And they told Scherzer a bill of goods. They sold him a bill of goods saying, listen, we're not going to be good. We're not going for it next year. And it was easy to get Scherzer out of there. Verlander, on the other hand, I truly believe the Mets weren't going to trade Verlander unless they got exactly what they wanted from a team that took on Verlander. They got it. They got the 1 and 3 prospect in Houston. That was the guys they pinpointed. If Houston wasn't going to give them that, I don't think they were going to trade Verlander. And that was the only place Verlander wanted to go. And I don't think, and Verlander said he was going to be okay being a Met if they kept him. I think the Mets got exactly what they wanted, and they were happy about that. And when it comes to the Buck Showalter situation, if Buck Showalter is here or not, the fact of the matter is you got Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, and Nimmo all in their prime right now. You can't wait. You can't just sit around and say, all right, let's not do nothing next year and waste a year of all those guys and wait until 2025. And again, this is the problem with a lot of people. You know, they take a year for granted. Last year, I believe somewhat the Mets organization took last year for granted, Hayden. And I don't know if they could have traded some of their guys, their prospects, to get better. And I felt like they took it for granted, thinking that they were good enough to make a run last year. And it wasn't going to affect them this year with similar team. And I think taking a year for granted is a big problem I think this organization has in their franchise history. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, listen, you could talk about the trade deadline last year of, who could you have given up? I mean, it would have been most likely a guy like Alvarez, Beatty, Vientosa, Mauricio. Right. And I think Mets fans would have rioted if that was the case. So, I mean, listen, that's the point. But, yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, this offseason, I mean, like I said, it's disappointing they brought in the same lineup. I think that's something that a lot of Mets fans, had inadequate feelings about from game one to even now. We look at the pitching, how this team invested in a veteran rotation that, had its consequences, and a bullpen that kind of just went downhill once Diaz got hurt, and then they didn't really just have the depth of, depth and quality guys.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, what was the main question you were trying to ask?
Just that, like, that they're actually going to go they're actually going to compete next year. They're not just
Oh,
skipping over 2024 and just saying, all right, we're going to.
yeah. Well, no one ever said the Mets aren't going to compete. They said they're just not going to spend. There's a difference between spending and competing. I mean, you could ask the Orioles and the Rays that exact question. And that's fine. Like I said, I'm not asking the Mets to go out and sign, a pitcher for 2 years, $80 million. I'm not asking for that, nor do I want them to do that. I have no problem for the Mets going out this offseason, signing guys at a lesser value, shorter deals, smaller AAVs. Whoever that is, well, we'll get to that when that time comes. But yeah, there's no need for the Mets to be going outside, giving these 2-year, $80 million contracts. I think Cohen and Epler learned their mistake on that. And, I think they kind of threw in, I think they got a little bit desperate, and then they realized it didn't really work. And now Cohen and Epler are kind of saying, okay, well, we can still compete, but we don't need to spend money to compete or spend a lot of it on one or two guys.
Correct.
So, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, $86 million between Scherzer and Verlander.
Yeah,
you can do a lot. You can get three pitchers, 25 apiece, and you're about the same amount of money that you paid those two guys. Yamamoto. Say if the Mets trade for Corbin Burns, sign Jordan Montgomery, sign Julio Urias, and get Yamamoto. Well, there's your rotation, and that's with Senga. And I truly believe the Mets are really believing that Senga could be an ace. And I wouldn't say he's a top-notch number one, but he's solid enough to be a number one. And that's really all you need. Can anybody tell me what National League team has a great rotation? The Dodgers and the Braves are the best two teams in baseball. And the majority of their pitchers were hurt the majority of the year. So they've won with basically throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks. That's what they were doing the entire year. And, it does help. What the Mets are trying to do now is build a lot of pitching depth throughout their farm system that they're building up slowly. But, every time the Braves bring up somebody and the Dodgers bring up somebody, they pitch at least decent enough to keep them in ball games. And those are the two best teams in baseball in National League. So, it just shows you that, pitching's important, but there is no National League rotation. And I went through this a couple of weeks ago by the deadline. Look at the National League teams and look at their rotations. They're not very good, right? The Brewers, I think the Brewers have one of the better rotations, and people don't even think they're going to do any damage in the playoffs, right? People are talking about the Braves and the Dodgers, mostly because of their offense. But you see what happens when it comes to the playoff time. The runs shrink because you're facing mostly the best pitchers every single time out. You're not facing that fourth and fifth starter. You're only facing their 1, 2, and 3, especially in a wild card series or in an NLDS. So it just makes sense, the fact that solid pitching is important. Top-notch quality rotations the Mets were supposed to have. They definitely had it last year. And when you counted on them to do their job, they completely failed. There was no recovery. And I think that's more important because I think we relied so heavily on the pitching last year that once that got popped in the mouth, the offense could not recover and make up that ground. And I think that's the most important. What do you think, Hayden? Do you think that the Mets should go for more solid pitching and say, you know what, let's get some solid pitchers from the trade and free agent market and let Senga be that number one? Not technically a number one, but he's good enough to be a number one, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like Ken just said in the comment section, pitching wins championships. Sure. Pitching wins championships. I mean, if you look at last year, this is a team that this year the Mets have scored more runs and averaged more runs in a game now than they did last year. Well, you may question yourself, well, why aren't they doing well? Because they're pitching. They're starting pitching at bullpen. So I want the Mets to, build the rest of their rotation of bullpen. Because you go into next year, you have Kodai Senga, great. You have Jose Quintana, great. Those are two good arms. Unfortunately, you have a 3-4-5 starter and, a 6 as a depth. Could that be a Yamamoto? Potentially. I have to look at the free agent list for starting pitchers, and bullpen too. Josh Hader, I'm seeing in the comment section, he's a popular bullpen arm because David Robertson, could the Mets bring him back? He's not doing well in Miami, so maybe that'll make his value a little bit less. He did very well with the Mets before he got traded off at the trade deadline. But I guess to answer your question, Rob, I would say I would like the Mets to kind of, whether it's via trade. The Mets, they have a lot of prospects. Everyone's complaining that the Mets have way too many infield prospects. Well, that's what you do that for, because then other teams, well, that may be their weakness, and they may have a lot of starting pitching on the roster now or in the minor leagues, and well, that's how it works. That's how business works. So I would like to see them, whether it's trade for starting pitching and bullpen, whether it's to sign a couple guys. I'll look at my laptop right now. MLB 2023, 2024 free agents, and I think there are arms out there, that the Mets can go after. Obviously, Ohtani. I'm going to put him aside, obviously, for a situation, but I think starting pitching, it's a lot of 3-4. It's a lot of like 3, 4, 5 starters. Whether it's a guy like Kyle Hendricks, whether it's a guy like Lance Lynn, Kenta Maeda, Sean Manaea, Lucas Giolito, Alex Cobb.
That's why I think Corbin Burns is probably right on the table for the Mets to trade for. And again, they had a lot of conversations with the Brewers this year, so I think that could be in the works because Corbin Burns wants out. He already said it.
And that David Stearns connection there, if he does come to New York, not saying he is, but if it does, then that could be a little bit of a kind of a push on the Mets side. But like I said, Mets have a stacked farm system now, and if whoever in AA and AAA can continue to get that value up, well, that can make the Mets return with Corbin Burns and who they come up much more favorable on the Mets side, and that's what I think is going to be important. But I really would like to see the Mets boost their starting pitching and their bullpen. Even look at this bullpen, and I know bullpens are tough. They are complex. Bullpen arms, you have to look at relievers. You have to look at annually. They're year-to-year guys.
It's a lot of luck.
Relievers have back-to-back lights-out year. Not saying that Edwin Diaz isn't going to be elite next year, but keep in mind he's coming back from injury. And, is he going to pitch like how he did in 2022? It's a possibility, but I'm not going to bank on it. Because like I said, relievers, no relievers had back. I mean, I could probably count on my hand how many dominant relievers there have been in history that were elite from, year one to the final year of their contract and with the team they played. But, like I said, if Diaz could be the sub-3 ERA guy, I would have no issue with that, of course. But, Mets bullpen's going to be an issue, too, like we discussed. Starters aren't going deep into games. The pitch clock is having a big effect on that with the pitch count, modern-day baseball, pitching injuries going up. Starters aren't going, 7 innings anymore. We're asking our starters to go 5, 6 innings. If they give me 7, I'm happy with that. Look at his bullpen now. I mean, do I trust Ottavino? Ottavino's a free agent after this offseason, correct?
Yes.
We'll just say he is for the sake of this.
No, he has an option that I think it's a player option.
He has an option. He'll probably, who knows? Well, for the sake of this, we'll just say he's gone after the season just to say it. But then think about it. I don't think the Mets have any plans on bringing back Gott. I don't think the Mets have any plans on really bringing back a decent amount of their bullpen.
They're going to spend a lot of money on the bullpen or trades.
Right, and that's the thing is the Mets need to focus on their bullpen. Like we said, bullpen arms are getting more starts. I don't think the Mets have any plans on bringing back Trevor Gott. I don't think they have any plans on bringing back Drew Smith. There's really only a handful of bullpen arms in that bullpen, and the relievers that I really trust. Whether that's Brooks Raley, could be that nice lefty southpaw 7th inning type guy. That's really it. Or what are they going to do with David Peterson and Tyler McGill? 6 starter bullpen. I'm not going to bank on them being a reliever, but right now the bullpen is kind of my biggest concern right now. I know it sounds crazy, but it's kind of one of the concerns that's kind of a little bit, not visually seen. I know everyone's focused. The 3, 4, 5 starters. This number 6 bat in the lineup. Well, I do think the bullpen is a concern. I mean, whether, you go into next year, and I mean, right now it would probably be you're right. Ottavino he does have an opt
Yeah.
out, but
Yeah.
I mean, you could look at something like Rayleigh Ottavino Diaz. I mean, if you bring back Robertson, great. If you get Josh Hader, great. If you get anyone, great.
Easy was talking about that with Josh Hader. I just looked at Josh Hader's numbers, and his numbers are great this year, but they're all ninth inning. Everyone one inning, never 2 innings. And again, with Diaz,
and because they can't pitch in the 8th inning, because apparently that's
he has a
mental
4
for
point.
them, which
I said a 5 ERA in the 8th inning. He has a 4.75 ERA in the 8th inning, and he's 0-3.
Same shenanigans with Diaz in 2020 and 2021.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, and again, Hader's going to be looking for closer type money. You're not going to give another bullpen arm $85 million over 4 years to be the 8th inning guy. And Hader is going to wants to be a closer. He's not going to take, closer money. He's not going to get closer money from the Mets when he's looking for closer money to be an 8th inning guy. He's going to look somewhere else to close. And what Easy just talked about when it comes to the Brewers trade, why would they trade with the Mets? And it has nothing to do with Stearns. Yeah, it might help the Mets with Stearns with knowing their minor league system and knowing what they might be looking for prospect-wise to make a trade. But yeah, the Mets would have leverage. Both teams would have leverage, right? The Brewers don't have to trade Corbin Burnes. But if Stearns knows what they need in the minor league system and what they're looking for, clearly he's been there for so long. He knows what they want and what they like in the organization. If the organization likes shortstops and outfielders, well, the Mets got a plethora of them now. They can work with that, right? So yeah, they'll have leverage, but the Brewers have the leverage because they have the asset. And I'm not saying that the Mets are going to be the only team in on Corbin Burnes, but I think if it's Stearns, the president of baseball ops, he knows exactly what they need and what they look for in the prospects that they're trying to acquire. Again, they were the ones that called the Mets about Pete Alonso, right? So they were willing to give up a ton of prospects because apparently there was an offer on the table and it wasn't close enough for what the Mets wanted. That's why the deal didn't get done, most likely. But if they were willing to do that, that means to tell you that they're trying to go for it now, because I do believe that they don't think they're going to be able to sign Corbin Burnes and to go through another arbitration process with Corbin Burnes already pissed off. I don't think they're going to keep him around. And I think that's the big reason why they're trying to go for it this year. And they already had conversations, and the communication seems to be very good between the Mets and the Brewers. I mean, they traded Canada. I'm not saying Canada's, is Pete Alonso, but he's been very good for the Brewers, really good. He's been one of their best hitters over the last month. So it goes back to the same thing. Keeping a line of communication open, I think, is extremely important for this offseason. And in a situation where the Brewers have a pitcher that could be an ace of your staff, and the Brewers know that, and knowing that they can probably get more this offseason than the trade deadline, because he'll only be a 2-month rental by then, you'll get more back knowing that you're trading them in the offseason, with a team that trades for him gets a full year of Burnes instead of just 2 months. So I think that's why the Mets would have leverage in that situation. One, because of Stearns knowing what they want prospect-wise, and the Brewers can get more in the offseason because it's a full year of Corbin Burnes instead of just 2 months. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Hayden.
I agree with that.
All right. So Nola. Somebody brought up Nola. I don't want Nola. I don't think Nola's very good. Again, I fought with Philly fans 2 years ago who saying, they even talked about Nola being better than DeGrom and how good Nola is, and he is an ace. And I laughed and says, no, Wheeler's your ace. He'll always be your ace because Nola's not very good. And people talk about, if he gets out of Citizens Bank Park, he'll be better. Well, yeah, I mean, most pitchers will be, but how much better? And I think he is mentally just – I don't think he can handle New York, to be honest with you. I don't like him at all.
I think he's too streaky. And, I mean, I've been told this by Philly fans. Very streaky, long ball merchant. So, I mean, it's Citizens Bank Park, that right field wall, but still I could see Mets fans going nuts about, just not being fond of him.
Yeah. I don't want Nola.
There's starting pitchers. When I think it comes to starting pitchers, I think it's going to be more trade-based than free agent. unless you don't include Yamamoto in that. But I don't know. Just you look at this year's free agent market with pitching. It's all 4 or 5. It's all like 4 or 5 starters, and I mean, listen. As long as this, like I said, I asked for pitchers to for quality starts. 7 innings, 6 innings. Give up 2-3 runs. What I don't want is 4 2/3. 5 runs. Yeah, because that's an issue. Because then that burdens and overtaxes the bullpen, and then puts a burden on the offense to kind of come back into the game. So. Pitching is going to be important. I mean, everyone's really. I really feel a lot of people are neglecting the bullpen, thinking it's not an issue. Same with the rotation. But who knows? The bullpen, maybe some random dude will just come in and just lights out. I know Grant Hartwig's been a little rough lately, but he could be a guy I could see coming in. He was great early on the season. I could see him being a big asset. Brooks Raley's been great. I could see him. Raley hasn't pitched in a while. I don't see him out there a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if he got.
I mean, I don't watch all the games anymore, but for the few games I've watched scattered, I've never seen him really pitch.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, really has been. I don't know if he's been injured or sick or whatever, but yeah, I haven't seen him much. But again, he's going to be in this bullpen next year. Along with Diaz, a healthy Diaz. If I think Ottavino has the player option, so right, it's a player option, not a team option, right, Hayden?
I believe it's a
player option, I believe, or I think it's a player option. If it's a player option, he had a terrible year this year. He's not going to get as much money as he is now, opting into that contract. So I don't think he's gonna.
Yeah, I mean, Ottavino's a kind of a prime example of why relievers and bullpen arms are annual guys. I mean, he was great last year, and this year sub 3.11 ERA. Looking at some of the basic stats, but. I'm not expecting him to be, elite once again. He'll be 38 years old.
Yeah.
So a year older. So.
Yeah, I see it as a situation where, I think everything's on the table, right? Aaron Loup was the best reliever in the Mets bullpen a couple of years ago. I mean, he's a disaster now. So, I think it's bullpens are fickle. The best bullpen arm in baseball could be the worst one the following year.
Option.
Yeah, and
player option.
Okay, so yeah, he'll be here next year. But again, I think that instead of Ottavino was put into a role where he needed to be the 8th inning guy almost every time because he was projected to be the 7th inning guy or maybe even the 6th inning guy. Along with Raley. He wasn't supposed to be put into this massive spot here, and he always had that security blanket last year of that when Diaz went out of and Easy talked about Ottavino, getting a couple of closing situations last year when Diaz was pitching in the 8th. Yeah, that was a handful of times. That wasn't like 20 times. That was like 5 or 6 times, if that. And you keep on talking about Hader. Yeah, you would pay Hader. I get that, Easy. But again, no team is going to pay another reliever closer money to not close on a regular basis. It doesn't happen. You're not going to have $185 million between 2 relievers. You're not going to do that. Again, it makes sense in hindsight, but Hader is going to get closer money, and he's going to go somewhere where he's going to know he's going to close every single time, almost every single time. He's not going to do that, and it's just he's not going to do that, and the Mets are not going to pay him $85 to $100 million over 3 or 4 years. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. This is not a guy that's going to take 2 years, $20 million. He's not that pitcher. He's a closer that is dominant in a closer's role and nothing else. You think a guy that is sitting in the bullpen who's always ready to be a closer and in the 9th inning, and then you're going to tell him, hey, be ready in the 7th or 8th inning or the 8th inning because we're going to need you then. That guy's not mentally prepared for that. I just gave you the stat. He has a 4.78 ERA. In 8th inning, and he don't pitch a lot of 8th innings, but he's not good in the 8th inning. He doesn't have that mentality. And to sign Hader for all that money to pitch him 6 or 7 times throughout the year, say if it's even 10 times throughout the year, that's not enough for him to say, okay, perfect. I'll sit there not knowing when I'm going to pitch the 8th or the 9th when the guy is already, he's got great stuff, but he's mentally he's just that He's just not that way. Familia was that way. A lot of closers are that way, right? Diaz was an anomaly. Just because he did that last year doesn't mean he can do that next year when he comes back. We just don't know that. And again, the Mets are not going to pay $85 to $100 million for a guy that is not going to be their everyday closer. It's just not going to happen. In hindsight, it looks great. Hader, Diaz won 8th and 9th. It looks beautiful. But it's rare that you're going to pay two guys north of $20 million to be an 8th and 9th inning guy. It just doesn't happen. I mean, find me two relievers, an 8th inning and a 9th inning guy, both can be closers that are making closer money. It just doesn't happen. So you're going to be looking at guys that you're giving 1 year, 2 year deals, like a David Robertson. I haven't really looked. I don't know, Hayden, if you looked at the reliever market.
He's been horrible in Miami.
Yeah, I know, but I think that he just never wanted to leave, and I think it just messed with him, with his mental, to be honest with you. I think he's okay.
Yeah, I think that is one thing. Yeah, I mean, even Robertson's stuff hasn't looked great. I mean, if you look at some of the mechanics, whether it's the spin rates or some of the stuff like that, it hasn't been great in Miami. But yeah, I agree. I think Robertson wasn't really thrilled on leaving with the Mets. I mean, you kind of look at his press conference, and I don't know, there were a couple things he said which kind of were, I guess, kind of red flags if you're the Marlins in this case. But I don't know. Like I said, if his value's low, I mean, if you get him cheaper, I mean, I guess it could hurt to bring him back to an extent. But at the end of the day, I mean, my final thing is just build a bullpen.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Build a great bullpen, because I don't trust this bullpen right now. And I mean,
absolutely.
The last thing you want to see going into next year is like 2019, a team that doesn't have the highest expectations, but they have an adequate to above average rotation, an offense that's going to score you 4 or 5 runs, and then you have the bullpen to blow it. That's the last thing you want.
Yep. Yeah. And again, who had high expectations this year in the National League, right? The Padres, right? Or in baseball, the Padres, the Mets, the Yankees, all three of them are not making the playoffs, right? The Toronto Blue Jays have hype every year. They're at risk of not making the playoffs, right? I mean, Look at the teams. Look at the teams in the playoffs in the National, or might be in the playoffs in the National League. The Reds, the Cubs. Everybody was talking about the 3 teams in the NL East making the playoffs easily, when 3 teams in the Central actually might make it. That's crazy. So expectations are, unless you're projected to be the Yankees were projected to be a 98-win team, 97-win team. You know what I'm saying? So projections means nothing, right? That's why you don't play the game on paper. You play it on the field, right? One thing goes wrong, it could be a trickle-down effect. The Diaz World Baseball Classic thing happened, and it seemed like it took the air out of the Mets for the season. I mean, you can't just blame that one thing, but the Mets should have been good enough to make the playoffs with all these extra playoff teams, but they didn't. Just like the Yankees. The Yankees had a ton of injuries, but they were still a team that should have still been good enough to make one of those wild card spots. The Padres, they were mostly healthy the entire year. What's their problem? Everybody just keeps on killing the Mets. Look at the Padres. Look at the Padres and what they've done. The Padres spent a ton of money as well. They have a really good rotation with Snell having a great year. Their rotation's really good. They got a scary-ass lineup. They got a very good bullpen, yet they're only 2 games better than the Mets. You can't predict that type of stuff. Yet the Cubs and the Reds and the Brewers could all make the playoffs in the National League. I mean, you might as well just hand the Braves and the Dodgers to the NLCS. You might as well just put them in the NLCS. That's ridiculous. And it's crazy to me. It is.
It's how it goes. It's teams come out. They have good years. They have bad years. Expectations is expectations. There's teams that come out of the woods. There's teams that fall and just collapse last minute or earlier on in the season. 162-game season for a reason.
Yep.
It's why it's not 100. It's why it's not 60, whatever. So, yeah, I think, like we said, look at the teams that spend all this money, the Padres, the Mets, the Yankees. Well, we're all going to be chilling on our couch in October watching football and just chilling. But, we'll see teams like the Orioles. We'll see teams like most likely the Rays. potentially teams like the Reds or Cubs in that NL Central when they're in there and they had no expectations. I mean, go back to March and before the season started and look at the, Pacoda and all the projections and standings and see what they were supposed to finish. What, like 72 and 90? It's the other way around pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, before we finish it up for today's Shea Bridge Show, Mauricio, he's been everything what everybody expected him to be. He's 5 for 8 in his first 8 plate appearances. He looks poised. He looks like a ball player. I think it's that simple. I mean, he looks so damn big at second base where he just doesn't look like he belongs at second base. But that's where the Mets feel comfortable, where they think he can be the most comfortable on the field is second base. But he's so big. He just doesn't look like a second baseman. But him and Lindor turned a great double play. Lindor. Speaking of Lindor, we're about the Gold Glove. I think he should win a Gold Glove this year at shortstop. That play he made, I don't know if you saw it, Hayden, where he basically olayed it and then turned it 6-4-3 double play. And I think it's awesome. I think that Mauricio, again, I always thought I thought the Mets were just waiting in the wind ready to trade this guy. Again, maybe they still will, but maybe if he has a really good September, they might really have second thoughts. And again, I know a lot of people don't want to trade Mauricio. I don't want to trade Mauricio. The only reason why I said that it's looking like that because they didn't bring him up this entire year when the Mets needed some help, and they traded for Lindor, signed McNeil, and basically Beatty has third base, so there wasn't really a lot of spots for him unless you move McNeil to the outfield, which they're doing now. Like with Mauricio, I mean, it's a great signing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if you look at Ronny Mauricio, I mean, I'm happy that they finally called him up. I think it is about time that they've made that decision. I think it's in that time. And like I said, I'm happy. He looks great. We see the power, the exit velocity, how he hits the ball hard. He's hitting 110 miles per hour. And we've been seeing that. He's hitting the ball hard. And that's what he was projected to do pretty much. He was projected to hit the ball hard. And you're saying 110, 117 miles per hour off the bat. And, like I said, hit the ball hard, and he could be an insane power hitter. He's win 3 games? He's like 7 for 10 or 11, something around those lines. But offensively, he looks great. I mean, I don't see him chasing at any of these crazy pitches in the dirt or these weird sliders or any weird pitches like that. But like I said, it's a small sample size, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, he's not going to, go for 7 for 11 every single, every 3 games, just, but, if he could be, the sub, 260, 270 guy, I mean, depending on what type of hitter he wants to be, if it's more power, a mixture of that, I would be in favor of that. So I think when it comes to Mauricio, I'm happy they called him up. Why didn't they? Well, I think there could be multiple reasons. Maybe service manipulation. Who knows? Maybe they wanted to give him the reps in the minors and didn't think he was quite ready because, it's a big change from AAA to Major League Baseball pitching. But about time, like I said, we're seeing what we were projected, the hard hit metrics, the hard exit velocity metrics. We're seeing that. When it comes to defensively, kind of, do you like him at second? He's a little bit big for a second baseman, but if he makes the plays, he makes the plays. Could he be this utility where he's like second? Maybe if Lindor needs a day off, play short. I've been a big proponent of putting him in the outfield. I think he has the athleticism in the arm, but we'll see. So Mauricio, that's Mauricio. Lindor looks great. I think he should win a Gold Glove. The only person I think would outbeat him is Ha-Seong Kim. I know he's been kind of overlooked because just Padres haven't really been relevant at all this year. Keep in mind, he's shortstop. Tatis is in the outfield, so he's been great. Ha-Seong Kim. I mean, he's been great. So we could maybe be the only guy to stop him, but if not, my money goes on Lindor.
I agree. And it goes back to the same thing. Again, I really maybe it was service manipulation. Again, to have Beatty, Alvarez, and Mauricio come up this year and all get 1 year of service time in. They're all going to be free agents at the same time. I know that's years down the road, and if they get good enough, maybe in year 2 or 3, if Alvarez is looking like the player everybody thinks is going to be Ronny Mauricio, maybe the Mets say, hey, listen, we'll buy your arbitration years and give you a 6-year deal, 7-year deal, Maybe I want to see the Mets start to do that a little bit because I think it just saves them money at the long end, and it gives them a little bit of more ammunition financially. Even though Cohen has a lot of money, saving a little bit of money buying out arbitration years could get you that big fish, say, a Juan Soto in 2025, something like that. That's the way I see it. So, Hayden, let everybody know what you're doing. Are you doing that Bills channel, by the way? I started my Cowboys channel today, by the way.
Yeah, I'm still in the early stages of that. So that will be, I'll probably have some updates on that in a bit. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I got for today's stream. Another Shea Bridge Show in the books. I appreciate everyone for tuning in on my channel and Rob's channel. Pretty good turnout today, I would argue. Great conversation in the chat, as per always. But yeah, that's really all I got. Baseball's baseball. I mean, just grinding out the next month. I'm, just doing the usual life of Hayden. So I'll have a couple live streams coming out for the next month. And then once the off season comes, my typical off season, that's when I do a lot more of my videos, as you guys know. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple weeks to months. And yeah, football's here. Big Buffalo Bills fan right here, as you could tell. So yeah, definitely ready for Bills Mafia. A lot to talk about with that. I will most likely be starting a podcast or channel for that. So keep an eye out on that. I'll have a little bit of more news to come with that. But yeah, that's really all I got. Let's go Mets. Let's go baseball. And yeah, LFGM.
All right, so there you go. Subscribe to Hayden's channel and look out for that Bills channel very, very soon. And again, guys, I just started my Cowboys channel today. First season preview video went up today. The Cowboys Report is the name of the channel, so check that out as well. I did a live stream at 6 o'clock tonight for about a half hour or so, just going over the basics of the season preview, going over my record for the Cowboys and all that fun stuff. So with that said, guys, I'm probably going to do a few more live streams for the Mets the next couple of days. Tomorrow the Mets are off. Thursday the Mets are off. So I'll probably do a Mets off day report on both of those days. I am flying to Minnesota on Friday to go see the Mets play the Twins Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'm also going to see the Vikings game on Sunday as well. As they open up against the Buccaneers in Minnesota. So look out for that type of content as well. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to another Shea Bridge Show with me and Hayden right here co-hosting together for another Shea Bridge. And, of course, it's not a very fun season this year, but keep your heads up, guys. Some point, this team is going to make us happy. At least I hope so. So with that said, guys, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. Hayden, have a great night. Everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. See you next time, guys.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are real.